We're here today to talk about the book Conversations with God,
Yeah.
which feels amazing in the hands.
Oh, yeah.
What kind of tea?
Mint.
Cheers.
Cheers.
What do you think of the library?
Oh my God, I think it's spectacular.
Oh, wow, this is wonderful.
I went home for the holidays and my mother had a tumor. And my dad was just in the early diagnosis of clinical depression. I said, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna start getting the principles back that you brought me up with.
We love talking about books that have changed people's lives, like had such an impact that they are different after reading the book. Our special guest today is Patti Penn. The big question.
Yeah.
So how did Conversations with God, this book, change your life?
I think it changed my life to
Are your highlights in there?
no,
You're not a highlighter?
not highlighter.
Underliner?
No.
Oh, I make a mess.
No, I like to take notes, sit with, if it's a transmission, kind of take a snooze for 10 minutes and then get back.
Yeah, you just kind of let it take its own tempo.
Especially in this book, you read a sentence or a paragraph and you need to process it. And sometimes the best way to do that is to just close your eyes and kind of center yourself and kind of let the brain do its thing to reboot
So important.
a thought or a sentence that is kind of coming up against something you've been taught, something that it's a fundamental belief.
What kind of tea?
Mint.
Mint?
Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers. What kind of tea do you have?
This is a coffee and tonic.
Wow.
So espresso tonic.
Wow.
A little more caffeine, I think, probably.
I had my caffeine this morning.
Don't you think a lot of people read books to get it done versus to absorb it sometimes?
Oh, 100%. I think we were laughing in the corner about the self-help section. And I said, we call that shelf help.
Yeah. No, I always say
Because a
that's
lot
the
of them
least effective part of the library.
Well, I think it has become so. I think it used to be, I would say in the 90s, when to get really a metaphysical book or a book that was talking about what's in the vernacular today, you had to go to kind of specialty bookstores. There was the Bodhi Tree here in Los Angeles, and in London there were other bookstores that were holding alchemy, magic books. They weren't in, your high street retailer. Yeah, so I
little
think
more
that,
fringe.
And then there was a lot of conversation in those bookshops. There was a lot of meetings, events, and maybe the community that I think people are looking for around books.
What do you think of the library?
Oh my God, I think it's spectacular.
If you were to analyze me just by the books that I have, what would you? What would be your analysis? Am I crazy?
No, I think you're very deep. I think you're curious. I think you want to know more about what you don't know. And I think that's admirable, because I think a lot of people like to know what they know and stick to what they know. And I think you're excavating through the mind of philosophy, art, movies, social, cultural, and it's interesting.
Yeah, I know very little. I want to know more, but I know very little.
That's the whole thing about being alive, right? We all have our own point of view. And
So you made a documentary, and you're
Well,
writing.
I didn't make it. I was in it.
Oh, you were in it?
Yeah, it was a documentary. It came out in 2017 called Heal, and it was supposed to last, I think, about a week in Santa Monica at the theater there, the movie theater, and it lasted 6 weeks, which is a long run for a documentary. And we did a lot of Q&As, and a lot of people loved the conversation around disease, healing, emotions, things that people were really ready to talk about. So yeah, I was in that, and it was an exposure to out of my bubble because I was in a bubble for, at this point, 18 years, just working with the people that I work with that, heard about me, kind of called me in, got it, whatever way you want to put it. And then this kind of exposed this conversation bigger, and it was great.
Were there any big lessons or takeaways from that experience?
For me,
Yeah, just what you came away with.
yeah, like I was in a bubble. I thought people knew this stuff. I thought people had correlated that, when I get nervous, my hands get sweaty, my heart starts to palpitate, I have a physical reaction to something. So if I am holding on to grudges and resentments, that is also having a physical reaction in my body for 10, 20 years. And so that kind of burst my bubble into outside of the people that already knew this or were coming to this realization. I think the experience, I met a death doula in Santa Fe, and she said it was interesting to look at my work because she felt that everything she was doing at the end of people's lives, I was kind of getting them while they were still, in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, that they could shift things. That was really interesting to me because it was the death of something in yourself at 27, 35, whatever. Now I'm working with teens that think, why haven't I got to this work sooner? And you're like, okay, you're only 16, but I hear that from a 46, 56, 66-year-old. I think it just comes at the right time.
But it's natural probably to feel that way, right?
Yeah, because they only know their 15, 16 years, right? That's, oh my God, I've wasted so much time not knowing this stuff.
Is it a trauma that you're getting rid of?
No, not all the time. Sometimes it is the awareness of patterns. Why do I have this pattern? What is it? What is it disguising? What is the fear underneath it? Where are my edges? Why do I keep saying that I'm going to do something and I'm not doing it? So it's like kind of self-analysis that they have started to audit, started to do a dive on themselves on some level. They've noticed, like a soft noticing. They've observed, they've realized, oh, I'm here again. Sometimes it's a disease, sometimes it's creatives, especially here in Los Angeles, been here for a long time, and creatives who are coming up against walls or trap doors that they have that they get to admit to. That's the big step, admitting. And how do I not hate myself for going down the dead end?
Yeah.
And double back and start again and regroup. People find different inroads to what I do and to themselves. And I just show up once they find that inroad, once they find that aha moment, or as Bill W. likes to call it, the psychic phenomenon. And something happens, something occurs, someone shows up. Or in the Joseph Campbell, I kind of show up in people's lives.
That timing is always interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, and I work with that energetically. I don't want to force people to be at a certain place that they're not ready for because they'll just sabotage it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In my world, the pre-qualifier for that is that they invest.
Yeah,
Free advice is often sabotaged.
Oh, completely.
It's
Completely.
a weird thing.
Yeah, because there's a value system that we're already in agreement with.
Yeah, if you're willing to invest in it, then you are already on. It's the placebo effect in the sense that you're committing to it working, in a way.
I think so, and I think
enough to get to open the door.
Yeah.
You still got to do the work, but it's enough that the door's open instead of people that say they want to get better, or they want to improve, but everything else is telling you they don't.
Well, a lot of people will say that they are You know, they've been working on themselves for 20 years. And you're like, why are you doing the same thing then for 20 years and not seeing results?
That's probably a hard one to answer.
Yeah. So the people that I have worked with that have answered that have said, oh, yeah, I kind of knew about you 5 years ago, but I avoided you because I knew you were going to make me go there and look at it. And I don't want to look at it. But now I'm ready to look at it because now it's everywhere.
Yeah.
So it's a delay. But then again, is that a timing thing again? That they wouldn't have been ready 5 years previously, but they're a cook goose at that point. They're ready. It's I think when people think they're ready and sometimes they try, that can also, because they don't have the energetic circuitry for the success, the money, the recognition. And that sometimes brings up a lot of old programs and old stories. So
That sabotages it.
oh yeah, I call it the killjoy.
Oh, it's great. So we're here today to talk about the book Conversations with God,
Yeah,
which feels amazing in the hand.
it does.
Like I
doesn't
like
it?
the way this book
It's-
is designed.
Yeah, it has a nice old kind of papyrus feel almost.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a great description,
yeah,
and it's heavy.
yeah.
It's got some weight to it. So where did you grow up?
Glasgow, Scotland.
Was that where you were until your early adulthood, or?
Yeah, I was there until my 20s, and then I moved to London for, nearly a decade. And that's where the book came into my life. I'd been brought up in a city that religiously was split, very sectarian in the 70s and 80s. They did a really good job at getting that out of the football clubs. And my grandmother, my family were considered mixed as Catholics and Protestants. And when my grandfather died, they didn't really kind of want to know because she had married outside of the faith. So she started going to the spiritualists. And that's when a lot of healers started coming into our life, and a lot of clairvoyants and a lot of mediums and a lot of people.
How old are you at this point?
Oh, I'm 3. And this seems normal. And talking about energy, talking about connecting to the light, connecting to a higher force is normalized. I'm also going to a convent school and warned not to talk about it when I go to the convent school.
Did that get you in trouble?
Oh, of course, because I wanted to talk about it.
Yeah, just my initial impression of you, you're probably not one that can be censored.
No.
Easy, right?
If it's something that I believe in, I can't be censored, but I can hold my tongue.
Did you have any early experiences as a kid?
Yeah, many.
What was one that was profound?
Probably when I started kind of connecting to what I considered my guide and that I would listen to, that I would hear, guiding me through life.
How old?
Hearing probably about 5 or 6.
And what sort of things were you needing guidance?
Well, someone tried to pick me up in a car once. I was standing next to the lollipop man, and it was a woman. I had been told, don't take sweeties from strangers, don't take rides. And this woman stopped and she said, I know your mom. She said, and you go to this school, because she saw, and I was like, well, she sees the badge, but maybe women don't have sweeties. And I went to get in the car, and all of a sudden this energy that was like thick, like treacle happened. When I had my foot in the car, something told me, like, get out of the car. This is, and I looked at her and I said, yeah, you don't have any sweets, and yeah, and I've got a badge on, so and I slammed the car door and I went back to the lollipop man.
And she just drove off?
And she just drove off.
Wow.
So there's things like that are, in the library of accumulated things that keep you from being kidnapped or anything happening to you, or, like the normal stuff as a teen or a kid where you know what's going to be in the exam. You kind of get it the night before, so you start reading that chapter and look, it's in the exam. And then I started doing martial arts by the age of 12.
What made you want to do martial arts?
Because of where I grew up. My mother wanted me to be able to fight. Being at the school that I was at and where I grew up, it was two different worlds. And I was getting chased a lot and beaten up. So she was like, you need to learn to fight. But you need to learn to fight like Bruce Lee. It was the 70s and Enter the Dragon was big, and she just loved all those movies. And we used to watch them together. So I went when I was 12, and it was some serious stuff.
So then did you get in more or less fights after you learned martial arts?
No one came near me after that.
Yeah, that was my experience with martial arts is I didn't get in any fights.
So I knew that the energy of me knowing how
you're
fight,
projecting a certain thing.
And then after I became a black belt at 14, I knew that there was an energetic emission that I knew something, and no one came to fight me.
So that specific energy, does that energy have a color? Does it have a density to it? How would you describe that specific energy?
Like if you get up really early in the morning, like at 5 o'clock in the morning, and you are wide awake and you're sprightly and you're full of beans, it's that energy. It's like you're not asleep, you're not kind of semi-awake. Like they look at you and they think, nah, I'm not going to bother with that one.
Yeah.
Because you seem in your body and in your, on your toes.
Does it have a color?
No, I don't really kind of see colors. I see it as like a lightness and a light and a luminosity. I know a lot of people that see colors. I think we all see energy differently. I work with musicians and filmmakers, so people see things. Musicians will see orbs, they'll see light, they'll feel the lightness, they'll feel the nuance of the notes and what's calling them, or when there's a block. People, I think, in film can sense, there's a sense of something's not working here, I don't know what it is, but I'm just going to wait and sit with it, or move on to another scene and then come back, and then it drops in, the idea. So everybody, I think, has their own mechanics of it. And I think when you can cultivate that, you become really successful.
Can I ask you a question about energy?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's say I go to a place.
Yeah.
And it's a gathering. Mm-hmm. And I understand my energy when I walk in the room and how I can affect the room or not affect the room.
Yeah.
I can be invisible or people can feel me. What is the energy that people will say, wow, I felt you before you were here. Like I knew something was going to happen. I knew you were coming or whatever it is. How can energy get there before you?
Well, I put my energy here before I came here.
How did you do that?
I sent it just by thinking about it, the thought of it, the thought of speaking to you, being in your space, being in the openness, in the willingness to open up, the enjoyment of it, of what you do. Just the thinking of it projects your energy forward. Like you thinking about going to the party, you thinking about who you might meet, what's the opportunities of meeting possibly new friends of the next 20 years and the next 10 years. So I think you having, it's like non-locality in physics, right? You can, your energy is already going there. Yeah, energy of not your physical being, but the energy, if there's no time and space, right, it's already happening. The event that you're going to is already in motion.
So like at the time that I scheduled or committed to going to the event, my energy is already going there?
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah, your energy is already, connecting to the other people that are also coming to the event. And then maybe there's going to be someone that doesn't want to go to that event. They just can't be bothered, they're tired, but you have to meet them. So they're like, oh God, I'm going to go. I don't want to go. I'm going to go for 5 minutes. And then all of a sudden they come and they meet you and they're like, oh, this is why I came. This is why I dragged myself off the couch. So your energy can also magnetize people coming. And it can also repel people that don't want to be there too, because they don't want to be in that level, maybe a conversation or whatever the gathering is. Because we all bring our own note, right? Our own like musical note that adds into the harmonies.
How do you get your energy to be the note that is the most collaborative and welcoming for others? And my experience is doing TM, Transcendental Meditation, has created that where I noticed a big change in people feeling comfortable, because I'm kind of a big, intimidating guy. That changed that energy for me, whatever that is, a vibration or...
Well, I think you also, well, you said that you perceive that people find you big and intimidating.
Well, you can tell.
Yeah. And I think when you compensate for being big and that energy is in the mix and it makes it worse. Whereas when you start to do TM or another meditation, or you start to get into yoga or whatever it is, that you start to find the inroads to being and dropping into starting to, how can I be more of this?
So more authentic.
I don't really like the word authentic as a process, because I think authenticity is a byproduct. I don't think you can, I'm going to be authentic today. I think I can just be myself. And if people perceive me as being authentic, then it's a byproduct of me just being myself.
Oh, okay. I've never heard it explained that way, but I like that.
Because then it's less work. I feel being authentic really hard work. There's a lot of...
Well, I could see how it would be. I don't perceive it myself, but
but I think if you just, I just need to be
me.
And allow people to not jive with me, like me, and also let them think that I'm big and intimidating and scary and all that. Like people would say that to me when they would see Heal, and the work that I do, and they'd be like, oh, how do you do that? How do you go into that space? And I'm like, what, of like the truth? This is a space I really like, but I can understand why people find it imposing and scary and terrifying, but I also really enjoy it.
Would you use the word truth the same as authentic as a byproduct, or is truth more...
No, truth is when you're honest with yourself, like a truth of, you know what, I thought I was this, but I just don't really like myself. I'm spiteful. I'm resentful at this person because, that kind of level of truth where you're seeing it and you're just trying to kind of feel into where the disappointments are so that you can clear them, rather than dragging around this bag of filled with stuff that's unnecessary, that's holding you back from what you're really here to do and be.
That's so interesting and makes so much sense. I have this conversation with people sometimes about loving yourself.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, I don't know that you need to love yourself. You just need to like yourself. And just like, I always feel like it's just if you're trying to love yourself, you're not being truthful.
Well, yeah, trying to love yourself is the word.
You just
trying.
need to be and like yourself. It's too high of a bar. Like sometimes you need to be honest that what you're doing isn't working.
But isn't that love? Being honest
with yourself? It is to me, but I don't think it is in the way people say it. The way people are saying it is they want belonging. They're like, I need to love myself. I need to belong.
Yeah.
So there's different versions of love in the way people describe it. I would agree that it is.
Yeah.
Usually people that say that are searching for something, and you're not going to find that thing by trying harder.
No.
You find that thing by acceptance and liking. You just got to start by liking yourself and being honest that there's things that I do that are creating this. And
but to me, that is self-love. You know, that's the byproduct of being like, you know what, I'm creating this, I'm doing this, I'm putting my head in the sand. And I think the admittance of that, just like someone walking into AA today and admitting that they've got a problem, to me, that's self-love.
Yeah. Okay, so you moved to London.
Yeah.
What is going on in your life at the time when the book comes into view?
Well, I think I turned 30, and
Was that an easy birthday or a hard birthday?
I think it was a birthday like all Saturn returns, 30, 60, and 90, that made me look at everything around me and say, why am I with this person? Why am I, doing this job? Like there was a lot of excavating of society and what is it that I'm here to do? 30 years went really fast. And do I want to be on this path in working? I was working in fashion at the time, but I also had my own practices of, energetically knowing how to navigate my own career. And then it was like 99. So there was a lot of, I was coming out of a relationship. So there was a lot of going to the clubs and dancing because I'd been in a relationship for 8-9 years. So I had missed that whole early 20s going to the clubs and dancing. So I started.
Because you were with somebody?
Yeah. So I'm doing this in my like 29, 30. And there's a person that I know who had his own TV show. Very, very successful. And it was the beginning of reality television, like houses and stuff. And he eventually gets put in a conservatorship. And he is drinking and taking a lot of drugs. And I hadn't seen him in a long time. And he was also gay. I think it was about early 2000. I was in Soho. And I ran into him, which I didn't expect because I knew he was in a conservatorship. And he said, "You have time to go for a drink?" I says, "I heard that you're not allowed to drink." And he says, "Okay." I says, "Let's go for dinner." I says, "And what is it you want to tell me?" He says, "Let's go to dinner." He says, "I want to read you a book." And I was like, "Oh, this is interesting." So we go to dinner and he pulls out this book and he starts to read the book to me. And he orders a Merlot, and I notice he's so engrossed in this book that he doesn't touch the drink. And I'm like, "Read me another chapter." And we're just eating, and he's sitting reading. That really, and what really struck me was his pain of, because I didn't understand why he had sabotaged everything that he had, the show, everything. And there was just this deep sadness in him because he was so connected to God, but then religion had told him that he was not welcome. And I didn't really kind of know what to do with that. But I parked it and put it in my back pocket. And then I moved to Miami. I had a dream.
So you're 30 still?
30, and I start reading the book.
Now, why do you move to Miami?
So I start reading the book.
It's an odd place.
I know.
Oh, no, so you got the book.
So I got the book and I start reading it, but I'm reading it and it's kind of resonating, but I'm busy. And then all of a sudden I start to have this dream on a Wednesday that tells me that I need to move. And then on the Thursday, the dream comes again. It's the same dream. And I call my mother and I said, "I've had the same dream since last night and it's really getting disturbing." She says, "In what way?" I says, "It's telling me if I don't leave, I'm going to be in the wrong side of the world for the next 3 years." And she says, "Well," she says, "if you have the dream tonight, I think you should resign and do whatever it's telling you to do." Because my mother's a big believer in metaphysics. So I go to sleep and the dream gets extremely intense to the point that I can feel it physically. And I get up and I resign from my job. I'm at the top of my game.
So what are you doing in fashion at that point?
I just left Calvin Klein. I was the buyer and ran the store on Bond Street. I was then working in retail and for the PR office for Jigsaw. So I'm really happy. I just came back from New York. I
Do you have money in the bank?
Yeah, I have money in the bank.
So you've saved?
I've sold a house. I have money in the bank.
So you don't have to work.
I don't have to work, but I enjoy what I do. But then something's clicking. Something's clicking where I'm like, really, do I want to tell people the length of skirt that they want to wear this year? Do I really want to be like putting clothes on people and telling them that, but really there's a deep sadness in them, but they're buying clothes? So I observe this gnawing within me. And I'm also bored. And I decide to leave.
Are you bored because of repetition or bored because of lack of depth?
Bored because I know there's something else calling.
Okay.
Bored because I know that if I stay, I'm going to be doing the same thing over and over again every season. And I land in Miami and I walk down Lincoln Avenue.
No, why Miami? Sorry.
It was shown to me in the dream that it was this piece of land with 3 causeways. And I was like, I don't like Miami, right? Because I just came back from Miami maybe 6 months before and it didn't really resonate with me.
Do you have any connections there, or
nobody.
You just fly there?
I just fly there.
And you're going to stay in a hotel?
I stay in a hotel. I'm like, okay, well, I just blew up my life. So let's see what's called me here. I meet a Scottish guy who is the head of a property company, and he's like, I'm going to show you some apartments. So he starts taking me around some apartments, and I was like, I can't find anywhere to live here. You need a credit score. And then I meet this guy, and he is, let's get you situated. And then I walk down Lincoln Avenue, and there's the book.
In a bookstore?
The window. In an old-fashioned bookstore, in the window with the spotlight on it.
How much of it have you read so far? Like a couple chapters?
Maybe a couple of chapters. And I'd put it down because so much was going on. And I go in, and the first people I meet is I met an artist. I was like, I want to pick up my painting again. I want to start just painting, and we go to the art store, and I see the book, and I go and go to the talk with Neale Donald Walsch, and I'm like, okay, I need to start listening. I need to start and I felt like I was decompressing from everything that you're told to do, right? Go into work, go to university, go get a job, all of that. I feel as if I'm kind of having a reboot. And I'm watching people run away from stuff in Miami, and I'm watching them run to stuff. So there's this kind of transient thing happening, but I'm just there to observe.
How is that running to and from different than in London?
I feel as if it was a playground for that in the early 2000s. It was people were, maybe they had come out of a relationship. They were going to go to Miami for 6 months or 3 months. Maybe they were trying to they didn't want to come to Los Angeles yet, but they were going to go to Miami. There was just this.
More transient?
Yeah, there was it was also a kind of gateway for Europeans. There was a lot of, Versace had a house there that I knew them. And it was familiar. Yeah, there was a European feel to it that was always kind of coming and going. And I met some really interesting people. And I painted, and I listened, and I watched, and I observed, and I decompressed. And then I went home for the holidays, and my mother had a tumor. That she had got from the medication she was on. She had taken rheumatoid arthritis when she was 23 when her father died, which we all knew was emotional. Like the shock, the pain had just ricocheted through her whole body. And my dad was just in the early diagnosis of clinical depression. And I watched the two of them be treated medically, physically, but not emotionally, their soul, anything like that. So I moved back to Scotland, and I said, this is what we're going to do.
So you left Miami?
Yeah, I left Miami. I said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to start getting the principles back that you brought me up with about energy and our emotions, and we're going to start to look at things, and I'm going to start committing to some energetic practice. So I start looking around, and the most intact system was a Reiki system. And there's other energetic practices, but this is the one that came into my life. And because my dad's a welder who worked offshore on the oil rigs. My dad's not a talker. He doesn't want to sit and analyze himself. But it doesn't mean that he can't. He doesn't internally. Well, what would be best for him is just for me to, at this point, Reiki his head, because now he's been diagnosed clinically depressed. He's voluntarily put himself into a psychiatric ward.
Oh my goodness.
Because my mother is what he sees as dying, his life partner from the age of 19.
So that's the catalyst?
There was other things before that, but that was the nail that was getting put in the coffin. And I see my mother in the ICU, and she is, I don't want to be here. In her, I could hear her, because I can hear when people are thinking when I tune in. She's like, oh, this feels so nice on the morphine. I don't want to be, my life's complete. Like, she's in her 50s. And I put down a book, which actually you had Christina on, The Celestine Prophecy from my mother. And I put it on her bed, and I said, and I whispered in her ear, it's not your time, get back in your body. And she's like, ah.
That was a reaction?
You're so much always at me. No. So, because she was drifting. She was, I don't want to be here, drifting. Which then, you don't. My dad is having a very hard time with it. So I'm going between the ICU and the psychiatric ward, which is full of boys, full of young men. And I'm like, something is wrong.
That these young men are
Young
here.
men are here. And my dad said something, which we're working on a book right now about it, because it's, he said, he says, sometimes, Hen, you just can't cope. And this is where you end up.
He's just resolved to it.
Yeah. And I watched them try different medications, then the electric shock stars treatments.
Oh, they were doing that?
Oh, yeah, they do it here in Los Angeles. It's still alive and well.
I didn't know that.
So I've been learning energy, so I knew I could send it. I could send energy. And I knew the some of the byproducts of electric shock treatment. So I said to my father, what time is your electrocution this week so I can send you energy? 2:00. He says, it's ECT. I says, let's just call it what it is. Let's not abbreviate. So I started sending him energy. And then he just woke up and he said, why am I letting these people electrocute me? And he started to ask that question of, why am I letting these people electrocute me? I must be really ill. I must be really sick. Right? There must be something wrong, and I need to start looking at what's wrong and what's happened in my life.
Instead of resolving to it or submitting to it?
Yeah.
And so both parents are kind of submitting to they're resolving and accepting it, I guess, right?
Yeah.
How would you describe that?
It was a surrender for me.
Surrender?
Yeah. Because I think we get really angry when people that we love are going through something, even if it's friends, we get really annoyed because it's inconvenient. Their depression, their illness, their sickness, no one likes to say it. But it's, why can't you just get better and get on the road and get it fixed?
But you're not taking that approach. You're sending sending energy.
So I'm sending energy.
What is that energy doing to them?
I think it woke him up to saying that this was not the route for him.
But why? Like, what shifts?
For him, he said it was the realization of, why am I letting people do this to me? I need to do my own work on myself. Why am I letting these people electrocute me? I have to look. And when he started looking, he started to get really honest about his upbringing, about things that had happened in his life.
Is there something counterbalancing the question, or is it just the question of why?
I think it's the question of why, and knowing I'm also doing this work that I can go over to the hospital or send it, or when he goes to the house and actually do treatments on him, that he's like, I want to be doing this stuff. I don't know what this is, but it feels good. And it feels right for me. And then my teacher, my Reiki teacher, says to me, I think you need to do this tapping thing. And I was like, oh my God, no, not the tapping thing.
Why were you resistant to tapping?
Because it was difficult enough to describe the invisible energy, to then have another thing to have to explain to, and I was irritated. Right, because I felt as if, you know, like, oh, here's the fool, here's the person that's left this big job, and now I have to explain what I'm trying to do to help. Like, it just felt like another thing, and I was like, okay, well, if this can help my back pain right now, I'm gonna go. I'll go, but I'm not gonna like it, but I'll go because you told me to go, and you're my teacher, and I trust you. It was really big in Scotland at the time because it was taking 2 to 3 strokes off a pro golfer's game. Because golf is the game of the mind. It's the game of consistency. And when you let those thoughts in of fear or doubt or competitiveness and comparison and all that stuff, it puts you off your game. So I found that interesting. And then I started using it with people. I started using it with my dad. I started using it with my mom. You know, she had, when they had taken her tumor out, they had snipped her colon, and basically she had a colostomy bag. And she was like, I can't have this, but seemingly they say it's not reversible. It's really hard to reverse, but I can't live like this. I can't live like this. I said, well, let's focus on creating someone to do it and do it well. Let's not go to the people telling you it can't be done and then give it a go and say, look, I told you it can't be done, so it's not been done. And all of a sudden, her surgeon's assistant said, if you let me do it, I'll give it a go. I think I can do it. I said, that's the person we want. And she did it and she reversed it. But we were sending energy to it. We were in our mind, you know, my mother was seeing it working. She was seeing what it would be like not having it, the absence of it, her body functioning again. And so there was a lot of, you know, when you're doing something and you're thrown in at the deep end of people that are really up against it. And I watched it change their life, and then the people that I was around. I started headhunting because I didn't want to work for anybody in Glasgow. I didn't want to work and ask for time off to go to a psychiatric ward. So I just created my own thing. And I would use my work for people who were visualizing getting the CEO job, the VP job, you know, looking at their nervousness, looking at, oh, what if they ask me this, Patti? I'm not good at this. I'm not good at interviews. Because when you headhunt people, it's not people that are on the gravy train of interviews, right? They're not pitching themselves. They're people that aren't even looking for a job. They're happy. So, but those are the people that really are, to me, you know, needed to be plucked out of that and put into something new. But they sometimes lacked the confidence, or they had fears.
How did you start finding clients?
Well, I knew everybody in fashion in London. So I just called them and said, I'm back. And this is what I'm going to do. And they're like, fabulous, darling. And I started to only work with the people that I knew were right for the job, and building a database like that, not just taking anybody on. I would do like mini interviews before putting them in the database. What
were you looking for in those interviews? Like, what were the deal breakers where you were like, oh no, this isn't for me?
For people, really it was, you could teach people certain things, but really it was a connection. It was the energy. Were they gonna fit in the culture? You know, the same way a casting director looks at who they're going to cast and who connects when you put people on sets. It's the same kind of vibration. It's the same kind of feeling. because you're dealing with the present and the future, right? Are they gonna rise to the occasion? Are they gonna, be the right fit down the line? So it's there's a level of intuitiveness that goes with that, a level of connection that is nothing to do with what you think is right for them, but watching the people. And you just know, when it's like a matchmaker almost.
So does it oftentimes happen that the person that wants to be the CEO ends up not wanting to be the CEO after you work with them?
No. The people that sometimes don't want to be the CEO, they're like, oh, that seems like a lot of work. I'm already fine here. But I'm like, you're the person that they're looking for. And this is why. And this would be a great move for you. You've been here for 5 years. This is going to be so exciting, blah, blah, blah. But they're not looking. They're not out there actively seeing. But maybe, 3 months before, a month before, they had that thought. Oh, I'm getting a little bored here. Or, I was thinking of looking at something and then you called me, right? I used to get that a lot. And that to me was a synchronicity. That to me was a connection of, they called that in.
So when you were in Miami, is that when you really read the book?
I really read the book and then I put it aside. And then because it was a lot of looking at our structures, looking at the way we live, look at the things that have been told to us that we've just went along with in society. And then people get into their 30s and their 40s and they're deeply unfulfilled, or they didn't realize that they were just being part of the go along, get along gang.
Like just mimetic.
Yeah, it was, I thought I wanted this. And I think that happens around 30 anyway. I thought I wanted this. And is this what I want? No, what is it? But some people don't even ask, what is it? What is calling me? It's just, I don't like this. I don't like this. And then you start to see burnout by the time 38 and in the early 40s come. Because you've already realized that something else, maybe being an entrepreneur, you've realized you don't want to work for a corporation. You want to start your own business. I know when I saw that, when I started that business, the headhunting business, there was a lot of people that would come to me who were real dynamos in Glasgow, but they didn't have the confidence to just start their business. And they would take me out to lunch or have a coffee and they would say, how did you do it? How did you launch? And I'd be like, I just did it. And then I had to sit with, well, that's not what they want to hear. And I realized my decision was completely utilitarian. I do not want to work for someone. I do not want to ask for time off. I'm going to see my father in a psychiatric ward. My mother is in the ICU, and I don't want people knowing my business. So I best start a company. It was just like that. And I think when people heard that, they were like, yeah, I want that too. I want autonomy. I don't want people telling me what to do anymore because I see that I could do it better. And I'm like, you probably could. You could probably do it 100 times better because I've seen your work. And they're like, okay, I'm going to do it. And then they would just do it.
How many times have you read this?
I read this book, obviously, because I was coming here. I haven't read it for 25 years.
In your life, how many times have you read it?
Once.
It starts off with a story, right? About a letter to God.
It starts off with this guy writing an angry letter to God. They made a movie about it, which I went to see. And it was really the precursor to the book. And it was how he had lost everything. His wife had divorced him. He was living in a park. I think he was in a radio. He was in, ran radio stations. And things everybody else was to blame. And he just sat down and he started writing this angry letter to God. And he went into some form of kind of automatic writing. And, God saying, well, I didn't say that. That was you guys that said that. You put that together and correlated that data and created this religion and that religion, and it started to look at how humans, you have a whole library of human history and psychology and of how we just make up laws and rules and things to live in society by that get outdated, right? That's why we have amendments. Because those amendments, well, we thought it was a good idea at the time, but then realized, because the consciousness doesn't change. I don't think the consciousness change. I think we change to realize the full extent of the consciousness. And then we have to amend things, make amends.
Once we become conscious of it.
Yes. Once we become conscious and aware that it is not what people want anymore. It wasn't even viable back then. It is outdated. It's kind of like the Scottish Enlightenment movement, when they had the Enlightenment movement about slavery, and I don't think this is right that we do this. We may have done this for thousands of years, but this is not right that we keep people. And that conversation was 60 years before it was abolished here. So it was in the conversation for a long, long time, abolitionists in Scotland. Frederick Douglass came to Scotland. He toured Scotland. He gave talks in Scotland. I think when we start to get conscious, it upsets people. It upsets people that it's who have a different way in different times of thinking and believing, and it rattles you. And I think anything that rattles you, like art, like you have your favorite artist, and I think that's really interesting to sit in a gallery and look at what that art that you are clearly repelled by and asking yourself why. And what that is bringing up for you.
And challenging it.
Yeah. And because it's challenging you on a deeper level that is an opportunity. And it's really exciting. When you start to get into it, once you get past the rattling of it, and you start to be like, oh, let's unpack all of this. Some people have to unpack things more quickly than others, right? Someone has a disease, someone has an illness that I'm working with. They have to turn the boat around, not like a tanker, but like a speedboat. So they have to start to excavate things really in a raw way, raw honesty, which I love.
So the letter, the angry letter to God, and then where does the book go? Or when you were at dinner, the first time you were introduced to the book, did he read that part, the angry letter to God?
The whole book is the angry letter to God.
Oh, that's the whole book.
The entire book is a Q&A.
But God replies in the book?
Yes, God, he, she, it answers. And there's a question, which is Neale Donald Walsch, and then God will answer. And sometimes they'll have
That's a great premise for a book.
Then they'll have some back and forwards, and then they will hash it out. There's a lot of humor in it, right? Because as God says, God invented humor. There's sarcasm. There's, that wasn't me, that was you guys. It's very interesting. And at the time, I think this book came out late 99s, 2000s. I think people were it was the 2000s, it was the new millennium, it was the 21st century. I think people were starting to ask questions away from, like when I was looking for my Reiki master, I was like, I don't need any more Victorian woo-woo. It is the light. It is the one. I need to know what this is scientifically, metaphysically, in a way that people can, if I'm describing it to my dad, who's a welder, will get, but if I'm having a conversation with people who are really into this topic, we can go in different directions with it. My teacher was the head of the cancer unit at the Beatson. You know, she was the radiographer, but she was trying to bring this work into the cancer unit. And that interested me because she saw people, real people who were having, you know, situations in their life. This was, you know, something that was life-changing for them and what they were going to do with it. And for me, even working with people with all sorts of illnesses and autoimmune, there's a common thread of there's something that they know that they want to discuss.
What does the book say about energy?
It talks a lot about like the frameworks and the structures. It doesn't say a lot about energy, and I think that's why for my father, I was like, you're in all of these structures and frameworks, and you're even with my mother and giving her the Celestine Prophecy book when she was dying. The minute the surgeon came to see her and said, "Oh, Jessie, you're reading the prophecies," my mother immediately decided to read the book, because here was someone from her generation, a doctor, a lawyer, she was now in this special club with her surgeon that had also read this book, and she felt an energetic connection with, and she
sprinkled his pixie dust on it.
She was elevated to, oh yes. So it felt like
I love your impression of your mom.
Yeah, she's sweet.
What are some good books on energy?
That's a difficult one. It's like your shelf help over there.
Why doesn't anybody write a good book on energy?
I have. I just haven't put it out without the work. I'm now doing it, but it's difficult because we like to discuss energy. We like to talk about energy. But sometimes the people that talk a lot about energy can't even read a room. So maybe I will. Maybe I'll write a book on energy. Let people really understand what they're sensing, what's going on with little, you know, sparks that they get when they get told to do something, or this feeling of repelling energy, or this feeling of magnetism, this feeling of showing up at things and you don't know why you showed up, and then you meet the people that you were supposed to meet.
How would you describe energy?
I think this is all energy. Like all of it. Reality is energy.
How would you describe the difference between experiencing energy or projecting energy?
Experiencing energy is just an awareness. Like as you said, you walk into a room, you know, one of your meetings, and you can feel the temperature. They called it in Ireland, we had them at funerals. They're called keeners, Keener. And they would take the emotional temperature at the funeral to see where things were going to kick off. Someone had too much to drink, so there's a fight going to happen any minute. So let's just put them in a taxi.
Sounds like all the holidays at my Irish family.
Right, yeah, let's put them in a cab and let them sleep it off. Or just let them fight it out, but let them get it out into the garden. So there was keeners that were able to take that emotional gauge, that barometer, and be energetically aware. You know, like the way mothers are when they see someone at the playground, or they see something and they're like, I don't know who that is and I don't want to know who it is, but just keep away from them. It's that building on those building blocks of the accumulation of your language of energy, because everybody's language of energy is different. You know, do you see light? Because you were mentioning colors earlier. Do you see light? Do you see auras? How does it show up for you?
I don't think I see. It's just a sense. I don't think I see a color.
Okay. And you see it's just a sense of a vibration, a vibe. So let's talk about the vibe, right? Because vibration is energy. It's because everything's in motion. So there has to be a vibration. There has to be a frequency. And some people might be selling something to you, right? You've got the Matt Damon section. He said that, people would give him books, right? But really they were pitches.
Right.
Right. So there's a specific vibration that he would feel in that book because he realized it wasn't a book and it wasn't a gift. It was a pitch. And once you start to know that, you stop thinking that all gifts are gifts, because some gifts aren't gifts.
So that specific energy that you're describing, to me, feels sharp.
Yes. Well, it can feel sharp and it can feel dense.
But it feels like the high end in music.
Mm-hmm.
If I was to describe it that way, the closest thing I can think of is that it feels like like if you turned off the bass and the mids and it was just the high end.
Yes.
That's how it feels.
Yes.
That feels closer to low energy.
Mm-hmm.
Like it feels like that's right next to desperation and black.
Yes.
So actually, when I say I see colors, I do perceive very low energy. Like here in LA, in downtown LA, the energy is very black. When I was young and I was in bands, there were a couple bands that did heroin. Yeah. And that felt black and it felt dead.
It is. It's roaring.
But you could feel that from through doorways, down a hall. You just felt this thing that was dark and heavy. It feels heavy and black.
Yes, and it feels like it's going to consume, which it does.
Now, people with good energy or collaborative energy, I don't feel anything.
It's a place of neutrality. It's a place, it's open.
So I really experience the negative energy more than the positive. The positive one just
feels like
you're not aware of energy because it just feels feels like home.
Yeah, it feels like a click. It's just open. It's like, we've known each other for a long time. It feels like love. Yeah. Right? It feels like that click. People have also, when we talk about like low energy or bad energy, I don't like the low and the bad and the negative because I work with negative people all the time. Right? I work with people that are spitting fire sometimes, but in their negativity, in their angriness, in their resentment, I see this admittance and I see this lightness, this light that has come on. So then the fire and the spitballing can go into like an illumination.
But that's a change in energy.
And that's a transference of energy, which I love.
But you're going from low to middle.
So for me, I'm not frightened of people who are, or I don't really kind of steer clear. It just doesn't register anymore. People who are, I think there was a very interesting podcast once with Rick Rubin and Pharrell. And Pharrell said that sometimes when people are trying to impress him or pitch themselves to him at dinner parties, he doesn't hear them. He actually just doesn't hear, and he just sees their mouth moving. And Rick Rubin said, well, what do you do? He says, I just turn around and start talking to the person on my other side. So he actually has a physical blockage to anybody that's trying to pitch to him energetically or anybody trying to impress to him. He can't actually physically hear them.
There's
it's zoned out of his frequency.
Yeah, I don't think I would ever want that.
Yeah, well, that was just something that he noticed, that I noticed that I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Okay, so when we talk about energy, I think the architecture in our mind is that something has to go from low to high.
Well, I think people think that, but I think energy is just energy.
Yeah, so I was going to say, I don't think that, for me, I don't experience energy going high. I experience low and high frequencies that are connected. Yeah. But middle is where the most movement is. I don't know that I know what high energy would be. It's only...
Let me ask you, when you were in a band and you were playing on stage and you were on a high, right? The frequency was high, the energy was high from the crowd, and you were on a high, right? Do you remember when that was high? So what normally people do is they find it difficult to come off of that high. So that's why the drugs come in. Because if I know I'm going to come off of an artificial high, i.e. drugs, cocaine, heroin, as you said earlier, I can control that. I'm going to take the heroin and then I'm going to come down. I don't know how to get out of this. I don't know how to get out of this high, this natural high. And it starts to feel constricting. It starts to feel like I can't handle it. I don't have the vessel for it. I'm starting to short circuit. So that's why then a lot of practices of the physical body to be able to handle all of the highs. And then sometimes when people get to the high, they spit themselves out of the high because they couldn't handle it. It was too much. It was not sustainable.
Well, I would describe that as still the middle energy.
Yeah.
Where you're in a zone and you lose track of time just like you do when you're meditating.
Yeah.
I don't think I would experience, but I think I've trained my mind not to experience lows or highs. Not experience isn't the right word. Not to give any validity to them. Like that they don't define what's possible in the moment.
No.
Like if somebody is telling me how great I am,
Yeah.
and if I've failed at something.
Yeah, but they're
just experiences.
They're external experience. I'm talking about an inner high. I'm talking about you have an experience of something that is...
When you're playing in front of a bunch of people, that to me is middle energy. You're collaborating with the audience and you're one.
Yes.
Especially when you're a drummer, because you're driving the train in a sense. So you're the conductor almost. And the tempo, they're absorbing your tempo.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's not this, it's this.
Yes.
I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm not into the highs or the lows. I'm just into what is the energy that is happening right now.
But if you're on stage and you kick the kick drum, everybody, you're projecting like, hey, pay attention, this is coming. And then the more of a groove you can...
Yeah, and then you become the conductor of the energy.
Yeah, but it's... And if they move with it...
And that's why I think music is a perfect vehicle to describe the nuances and the tempos of energy.
Yeah.
Because...
and there's a worship to it in a way.
Oh, completely. I think the creation story of Scotland is the Oran Mor, which isn't really written down because it wouldn't really do it justice, because it's the great melody. It's the great melody that is eternal. And it changes through the times. And you are part of that melody. You have to find your swan song, your tune, your tuning in that melody.
That's beautiful.
So to me, that kind of makes it kind of make some sense to me. That is this out of tune? Does this feel like, part of the fine tuning of the universe, like the fine tuning argument? Everything is in tune. It is an instrument that if it was off by 0.0001, there would be, no life sustained on the planet. So there's something in the tuning here. And if we can just tune in to whoever has tuned the tuning, I think our life, it would be a lot more exciting and vibrant and joyful.
Yeah, and isn't that tuning part of the creator, whatever the creator is? Because we were created in that vibration.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why.
That's also in that the Hebrew and first there was the word, right? It's that sound again. It wasn't, and first there was, light. It was a word. So the word is sound. And when we're talking about energy, we're talking about vibration, we're talking about frequency, and we're talking about all the nuanced aspects. And I love that, I didn't know that you were a drummer and you were in a band. So, you get how you can be the Pied Piper with, what you're saying, music, what you're doing.
And you can almost seduce them.
Yeah, because that's also an energy. Seduction, luring, coercion. Is also, but people sometimes aren't aware, right? They just feel pulled, right? Magnetic. Oh, this person has charisma. I want to be like them. And they get pulled in. So that can be tricky.
Yeah.
And that's when you accumulatively have to know your own energy and be in it. Like occupy the full space that you have in your body and in the space around you. And then I think life becomes easier. Because I think when you start to find your tuning, the people that are around you that want you to stay in a certain place in a certain way, they just leave. They didn't sign up for this. They didn't sign up for this frequency. They signed up for the other frequency. So nothing needs to be said. There needs to be no showdowns. There needs to be no ripping up of contracts and obligations. It just is what it is.
I agree with that.
The same way you change your energy the other way, and all of a sudden people start to come to you, collaborate with you, want to help you, and all you did was just start being more you. Yeah.
Okay, so the big question.
Yeah.
So how did Conversations with God, this book, change your life?
I think it changed my life to pursue helping people cope, helping people, looking at my own frameworks and structures that I had bought into, and kind of remembering, that's what the book is about, remembering why you came here. And I came here to enjoy life. And I think we all came here to enjoy life in all our different ways. But something has been contaminated. Something has got in the way. Something tells us that we're not doing it right, or we got it wrong, or it's not your place. You're not good enough. You're not in the club. You're not in the right class system. You're not the right color. You're not the right sex. Having my mother and father go through what they went through, I had to commit. I had to be all in. So I decided to be all in.
There's a lot of empathy in that, isn't there?
You can call it empathy. I think that's a word, but I was curious. I was curious to see where this was going to go. I'd already blown everything up. And the book probably made me do that too. So, caution, right?
Yeah.
Because things work on you on a deeper level, I think. And it just came at the right time, my observing of my friend who didn't drink that Merlot. That was the biggest thing on the table. The giant goblet of Merlot and him not touching it. And it was profoundly loud energetically, right? It was illuminated. It was like there was a spotlight on the Merlot, and all he could do was read this book. And all I could do was feel his pain of, I believe in God. I love God. I love, being connected, and they don't want me. And that made me sad. I didn't know what to do with it. I just, put it in my back pocket, and then I see my father doing the same thing. And I think, well, I might not have an impact, but I'll give it a shot.
It's beautiful. Well, I would love to be one of the first ones to buy the book. We would love to have that book here in the library.
I will visualize that. I will put it on the shelf. Where will I put it on the shelf?
And I'll give the book to people.
I'll put it next to Virgil Abloh.
Have you written a book before?
Yeah, I've written many books.
Oh,
But
okay.
when I was writing them, I was writing them to put out to the public. Something occurred. I was in a traffic jam on Fountain, and I was looking at this orange tree, but kind of staring at it, and there was all these oranges rotting on the ground. And I got this message that really felt like a dagger. After writing these books to be putting them out, it said, yeah, you don't need to be putting out any more books that people don't digest. They're like those rotting oranges. And I thought, wow, that's me told. So then when I started writing the books for students who were actually doing the work, the tempo changed. The brutality of certain paragraphs of how it is in what you're doing and quit doing it. And this is how you'll quit doing it. If you do this energetically, then people were like able to absorb those words with the work. And then some kids got hold of one of my books up in Hollywood. They were living on the street, and someone gave it to them. He was, they were homeless, and he was selling his girlfriend, no judgments, but he got hold of my book and he read it. The two of them read it in their tent, and they packed up their tent and they moved to Oregon. So I was like, time to start writing books for the public.
So that's what's next.
So that's what's next. Next is I've been in the alchemist's basement for 20 years. I've got my data. I think I know what I know. I now have to serve it up to people who want to know what they need to know so that they can have the greatest experience that they came here to experience.
Well, I can't wait to read it.
Thank you.
I'm going to give you my book. And I would be, same sort of thing as when I was doing it. There was a voice that told me to stop trying to be politically correct and stop writing it for certain judgment that I knew that I would get.
Yeah.
And just let go. And then that's when it got done.
Perfect.
So it's a little what people would think is edgy, but it's truthful. It's very close to the truth. And there's a tempo to it. You can tell I'm a drummer. There's a certain tempo.
I'll really enjoy that then. Because I like books with a tempo. I was really brought up with movies. Movies were my thing in the 80s and the 90s. So reading was not... I was more into experiences, but then in the last 20 years, I've become an avid reader.
Yeah, and also I think we're similar in the sense that like the idea of speed reading makes me I feel like that's like just people bragging about something. Like I will read the same page over and over. I want to understand it. I want to think about it. I'm in no rush. I feel no obligation. If I'm 2 chapters into a book and I don't connect, the book works for me. And so I very much like books that have like a tempo and a soul to them, and that there's layers that you experience.
And also interacts with your life. I love books that you read a paragraph and then that experience happens at a party or at lunch or when you're out and about. It feels as if you're interfacing now with something.
Yeah.
Which is what that book is about, is interfacing with the thing we cannot name.
Oh, what a great premise. I'm going to read the book. The premise of challenging God and then him answering would be so fun to write in that style.
Yeah.
To be God and answer.
Yeah. And it was seemingly in, yellow law notepads. They were just filled in the room. And then this woman who knew him was like, what are all of these? And he told her. And she started reading them and she was blown away. And she says, I want to do the copy on this. I want to edit it. And I think a few publishers did not want to publish it. And then it just took off for him. So I wish that for you.
Yeah, well, that's the fun of doing this is I get to
Yeah.
learn about books I may not have learned about.
Oh,
That was so fun, though. Thank you.
thank you for having me. Oh, your books.
Oh, yes. Yeah, so you'll get the energy from this in the tempo.